Welcome back to the Esports Central Podcast. I am joined by the one, the only, the Julia Bish Robson. My intros are getting a bit lame, but my guests aren't. Julia, how are you doing today, fine sir?
I'm doing very well. I just recovered from tonsillitis, so I am feeling a lot more sprightly than what I did a week ago this time.
All right, that's good to hear. So that's horrible. Firstly, nobody wants to be sick, but at least in 2020, kids say it wasn't COVID. At least.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was definitely like some post-rage stress, like just my body just shut down a little bit because I think like over the pre-rage period has always been quite stressful for me because I always like tried to like aim to please, you know what I mean?
Right.
But this year was a lot more stressful because of DNMK and it was our first event, so it's not just me, but it's also a bunch of other people that I need to manage. And don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. It was a lot of fun and such a big learning curve. And yeah, just hats off to all the other org owners and esports people that have to do Rage online this year. I can only imagine how hard it must have been for Rage team itself, but also for the orgs to have to like think completely out of the box. So yeah, hats off to you guys.
I mean, it was crazy, right? Because like Rage Online, like I don't wanna like be too nice because I don't want to get a bad reputation. I've already set my I told you the scene. No, I'm kidding. But Rage Online was actually a phenomenal achievement. Like genuinely, they made literally 11 hours worth of content a day for Rage. I don't know how they did it. Those editors are the coolest ever. Everybody involved like worked super hard. And special shout out to Junaid for telling me where I was in the film so I could actually go watch my parts. But I enjoyed it, especially the talks on the Korea's Day, seeing what some of the other African countries, the people had to say from there was like amazing. The guy from Anubis Gaming, you got a new fanboy here, man, if you watch this thing.
Exactly, yeah. I think a lot of people were doing some really cool things, and it was quite hard because usually at Rage you can be like, okay, well, Rage doors open at 9 a.m. and it closes at 6 p.m. Like you have that time frame to work with, and you know where you're physically gonna be and where you're gonna be sort of mentally. You can work around that. So like slotting your times in with your streams and like when your players are playing, like those things I would say is like a lot easier in a sense because it's all in one venue and you can physically like strangle someone if they're not doing something. But for me it was a lot different because I had to like manage all of this online, and it was Google calendars and it was Excel spreadsheets, and it was orgs that I was collaborating with that were doing the most phenomenal job, and I was just like looking at them like Goliath Gaming and Bravado, and they were just like smashing out Evernote, like collaborating on WhatsApp. I'm like, there is no blueprint as to how you're supposed to organize these events. Like everybody was doing it differently and everybody was just smashing it. So yeah, it was really impressive.
No, for sure. Like everybody had to hustle this year. It's the first time ever we had to do this thing, charting new territories in a sense, running an expo online, and I think it went swimmingly. Now, I didn't do the greatest intro of introducing who Julia is because I know her forever. She's known me forever, but she is
exactly
one of the like OG talents in the scene. She's been doing things in I don't know, for hundreds of years. She comes from a playing background. Then she was a talent, used to interviewer and that kind of stuff. We'll get to our old interview in a bit. And now she owns a team called DMKGG, which is a super cool team. Like I don't usually like. Whenever I see new orgs come up, I'm like, oh no, not another org. Like we have enough already. They're all so bad, but what I actually like the way you market it, the way you guys interact.
Really?
Like it's pretty cool, yeah. And I'm not just being nice.
No, I really get like a little bit emotional when someone like compliments DNMK because it was such a weird process. Like at the beginning of this year when we went into lockdown, it was like I was already in a weird space with my, Bish brand, as you mentioned, because like you said, I started with sort of talent, which is ironic because it was sort of the only way to survive as a female esports athlete locally. It's like you need to make money to actually be playing games. So like how are you going to make money other than, physically like having to create a brand for yourself? So in my mind, that was the only way for me forward in esports. And I always try to find like a fallback plan. Like, okay, if esports doesn't work out, if my streams don't do well, like what is my fallback plan? And I always knew that it was going to go into business. Like I really wanted something that was like business orientated, and I instead like did something more entrepreneurial in that sense. And did the whole Bish brand, which I mean wasn't something that I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do Bish, I'm gonna create this thing, I'm gonna sell merch. Like that was never the plan with Bish. Like I just wanted to have fun with it. So I got some really good sponsors at the start, and I was very grateful for that. And actually, it all started with Energy Esports. Even when we met, I was playing for Energy and streaming. And that was such a fun time because I was still studying dentistry on the side. And then I just quit all of that on one go. I was just like, nah, I'm done here. Fly to Joburg, stream full time, and just grind and hustled and like made it work, and attended every expo and attended every event, and just made sure like if someone said, oh, we needed this person, that I just became a chameleon of that person. And fair enough, there were some jobs I wasn't necessarily great at. Like at the start of interviewing, like I was very nervous and I didn't really know how to start a conversation. I didn't have the confidence in myself to ask the questions that I wanted to. And literally a year later, I'm interviewing snacks at IM Katowice, like complete turnover. Like my next guest is Pasha Biceps and Dupree from Australis. Like how did like this, even happen? So yeah, I got very lucky with how things just escalated for me naturally. And when people say like we like DNMK, I always get really giddy because it wasn't something that I ever fantasized or dreamed about or planned. It was just something like, hey, we want you to create an org, and we want you to name it, and we want you to do something cool. So DNMK, and they were like, what does it stand for? I'm like, dynamic, and they were like, okay, it works, cool. Here we go.
That is too cool. So if you guys ever want to see growth in the esports scene, myself and Julia did an interview 3 years ago at EGE when the Dota Masters was going on. It was hilarious. I think it might probably a funnier interview than this interview will be today. But wow, like your career trajectory then has been so different. But like you say, you've always been like, in my opinion, you've always been someone I've seen at like the top of the scene, always doing the right things. Like you say, you're working overseas and stuff. But how did you get this idea now to be like, okay, I want to start an org? Like, this is something I want to do, because it's very different, like you say, from what you were doing originally.
Yeah. Yeah, so DNMK came to me actually from an investor's standpoint. I got approached by an investor that was already investing in the local scene, and they wanted to expand their portfolio and create a competing brand. And ultimately they approached me saying like, listen, we love what you stand for in the South African scene as a female esports personality. And the whole swing of it was female, and I kind of didn't like it that way. To me, it's like, for me, if it's a competing esports scene, I want to choose what is the best, and I want to give everybody equal chance. Like, I understand when it comes to like growing emerging markets and stuff like that, how it's important to curate those spaces and assist and do your due diligence into understanding as to where you can assist in those spaces. But for me, in order to get to that point and be someone that would influence a smaller community, I first needed to make a standpoint to showcase that we were keen to be a part of the larger community first. So I took a lot of inspiration from 80K, Bravado, Energy, Goliath, like the big guys, and I was like, okay, well, what has all these orgs taught me over the years of working with them, collaborating with them, being friends with them, being friends of those org owners, and sort of like sat over like a period of 2 months just trying to imagine myself in that role. Like, how would I play that role that would be true to myself and my values, but at the same time learning from how other orgs grew up to what they are now, and to make sure that we will be a competitor from the day one. So I took a lot of inspiration specifically from the Bravado story, exactly how they came from like LAN, Call of Duty, just having the best players, the best teams, making sure that their PR was there, they were always present, they were always competing. And I wanted to have that element, but I also wanted to have it be a little bit more dynamic, and that is exactly where the name came from. So I was like, I definitely want to have a competing esports org, but I want to make sure that it's more dynamic, and I knew what it needed to have, and I know it needed to have a CS team, and I know it needed to have an Apex team, because that is what one of my sponsors required, Predator Gaming. And I knew that I wanted to look at other emerging markets and make sure that I cover all those aspects. But the first thing that I did was call Tendo plays, and I was like, Tendo, dude, I'm not starting this org without you. I need to sign a creator, and I need it to be you, and I need you to feel solid. I want you to like give me a list of your goals, your ideas, like who do you want to become, and let's make it happen. Like that's where my main drive was at the first few months, is just making sure that our content, our marketing, and our outward appearance and our story was correct. And I think that translated well, because I mean the teams can do their own thing. I mean the teams will win or lose and do their thing. But at the end of the day, I just wanted to make sure that when people type in DNMK esports, they're not seeing exactly what you said. Someone just is like an opportunistic esports team that's coming in, trying to create something. Yeah, tweeting on the org's name's behalf, representing a bunch of players and not sharing the same beneficial, spotlight. And I wanted that to be the first thing I do. Yeah.
So firstly, my boy Tendo repping. I'm so happy you picked him up. I love that guy as well. Him and my boy the Lemons did it from the Apex content creators. Like I don't watch a lot of streams and stuff, but if I do, those are the guys I'll go tune into. Great guys.
Yeah.
And like you say, like it's interesting that you say that like the first guy you hired was Tendo Place, and you have all these things going through your head, because I feel like there's been a big shift in the scene, in terms of what brands market and what they get into from the MGO side, because I feel like Bravado is a perfect example of this. Over the years, they used to be the people you thought of who have the best teams, right? They had the best Dota team, they had the best Counter-Strike team, they had the best, okay, I don't remember so far in FIFA history if they had the best FIFA players, but like they always had to go and have the best hardcore esports team, like in those traditional esports, the CSs and the Counter-Strike and stuff. But if you look at Bravado today, they're a very different brand. Like they don't actually have any PC game players. They got a few console players. Well, I mean Fortnite players. I guess you could count as PC game players. They got FIFA players, and then they just have content creators now. They signed so many content creators and stuff. So there's already a different style of marketing in terms of how esports brands function. So is that something you really thought about also getting into the scene in terms of the content side more than the guys who are good at playing video games, so to speak?
So I think the biggest thing is that, and what Bravado did brilliantly, is they found the Caramel Gamer. And I think that is like such a, like diamond in the rough, because his content is just like out of this world. Like it's so funny and it's so gripping, and like him as a character, it's just showcases like such a perfect, and it's again, they haven't stopped the Bravado way. Like they have still found the best content creator they could possibly find to fit their brand. And I think that's exactly what they're continuing to do, but our esports scene as we know it is evolving. And I think from an org owner's eyes perspective, when you're trying to build a brand that works, and it's now also you have investors, you have marketing, you have sponsors, you have to tick some boxes, and those boxes don't necessarily get ticked by the general esports player, unfortunately. And I think something that we learned from the international scene, and especially orgs that have traveled internationally and have competed internationally, they see how those international orgs make a living. Now, it's different there. Like you can have a bad personality be the best esports player in the world. Like that's possible internationally, because you have a lot more money to work with, but you have also a lot more money to hire creators to fill up for that gap. So I think when you look at what orgs are doing internationally, you're seeing how they're growing a content business and a marketing business to make sure that the scene grows as a whole. Because I mean, the 6 hours a day, 6 to 8 hours a day that Tendo is live on Twitch, that is 6 to 8 hours of pure DNMK content. That is, my banner's on there, he's representing DNMK, he's talking about love of DNMK, and those are all stuff that's natural. I've never asked him to do that. That's not in his contract to do any of that. So everything you guys see is organic, and that's exactly what we're trying to achieve with content creators. And I think that's what other orgs are trying to do as well. It's expanding your footprint beyond esports as a game, because we don't get enough content from esports alone. So yeah.
Right. Because I was always a critic in saying that I don't believe that South African tournament organizers from the esports side put enough emphasis on content. But I think from the MGO side, I think you guys went to another extreme, which I kind of, from the numbers point of view, agree with that. Obviously, you do have a lot of esports teams and stuff, so not from you guys specifically, but like from a bravado sense, like it's a complete different style from how they
Yeah.
had all those teams to now mainly focusing on content creation and a few players here and there. Is that numbers wise? I mean, Tendo Plays gets like between 40 and 50 people concurrently watching him every day, right? That's what a
Yeah.
Dota tournament would get. Maybe a Counter-Strike tournament would get a bit more.
Exactly.
But what are you investing in terms of paying Tendo Plays and compared to doing this whole 150,000 rand tournament, this, that? So it's a very simple thing from the numbers game, in my opinion, why
Yeah.
this change has been made.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, like, let's not misconstrue the fact that I think all orgs have a passion to still make esports the main objective. And at the same time, like, Tendo is playing a very competitive game, and he's plat in Apex.
Right.
He's not just messing around. He's playing ranked. He's playing solo. He's currently doing 45 days of self-improvement. There's content that's going into the esports community that's still competitive. It's still esports. It's not just, you know, messing around. So at the same time, we're still recognizing ourselves as a competitive esports brand. And I think that can go both ways. Like, I think that is still representing esports and growing a community that's enabling other Apex players to watch someone and interact with someone and get answers and ask questions and you know, feel a part of a community that maybe they didn't feel so a part of when it was just 20s. Like, you will have your top 5 Apex Legends teams and you can't touch them. Like, you can't ask them questions, you can't improve yourself. So what's the point of that? And from DNMK side, again, is like that whole concept of being dynamic is like, I understand, okay, we need a CS team. But I don't want just a CS team. Like, I want a CS team that is willing to assist with growing the community.
Yes.
So every month I have meetings with them and I'm just like, are you guys happy? How are you guys doing? And it sounds boring, but it's really just like a friend's chat. Like, are you good? Like, are you having a good time? Like, is there something that I can do to be better? You know, shout at me if you want as well. And at the same time, like, let me know. Like, I don't spend enough time focusing on just CS as a little box. So what's happening in CS that we're not filling the gap in? Like, we understand that content is an issue. We understand that there's not enough leagues and tournaments that runs throughout the year consistently. We know that there's not enough support financially for people to actually stop what they're doing and actually fully invest themselves into esports. So how can we have answers for those questions? So that's what we're trying to do. And I think at the same time, Bravado is doing the same thing. There is some restrictions to it because financially you can't make everything happen. Unfortunately, if I could host a 250,000 rand Dota tournament for the funsies, I would. I mean, I can't. I physically can't expect that from my investors. But what I can ask for is a Dota 2 representative to join DNMK, talent scout for me, find a streamer that's playing a lot of Dota, has a lot of passion for the scene, and start rather creating content and building that from the ground up again. So I think there is definitely a large shift in the community, but I think it's one that's needed. It's not that we're giving away from esports, but we need to reinvent how we look at it, for sure.
No, for sure. Like, and I love the fact that you mentioned that point of like accessibility from fans to the competitors, so to speak. Like, with the streamers, anybody can go on Tendo's Play stream, start talking to him. Hey man, what's up? How do you set up this? How do you do that? And he's willing to do that because I think in esports, in South African esports especially, we had a very, like, not an elitist culture, but it was like very closed off sort of community. Everybody was in their own thing. I don't think I actually only realized this the other day after being in esports for 3 years, but people from all the various esports sects, like the Dota community, the CS community, all these, they don't actually know each other. They don't know there's other things that exist outside of just what they do. So even within the niche of esports in SA, it's still so closed off to a certain extent in the esports world, and I think that's been an issue for a long time. So if streaming is something that can address that from an org's point of view, you know, I'm backing it for sure.
Yeah. At least even if it's not streaming, but you know, supporting someone that is representing a community. I think that in itself is important because you don't necessarily have to pay every single person, and not everybody needs a monetary investment to make things work. Like, I know back when we were, like you said, 2017, all I cared about is just going to a LAN. I don't care for anybody to pay me to go there. I just wanted to be there, and I just wanted to speak to people, and I wanted to know where everybody is, and I want to know what the plans were. I want to know who's the sponsor. I want to meet the sponsors. Like, those were the things that I found important. And for me, even the best thing was literally packing up my entire computer, smashing into my little student i10, and driving it off down to EGE, or like 3 hours away. It doesn't matter. Like, I'll go wherever I need to go just to go have a LAN with my friends. And
Right.
that is the type of culture that we should be focusing on. That's why bravado became bravado, and we mention it so many times in this podcast, because yes, there are someone that we look up to in the scene. There are someone that you should look back onto and say, those are people that have been supporting the esports scene for such a long time. They deserve that recognition. And I fully believe that. Like, I don't think anybody should take away from LAN culture, PC gaming culture, even consoles at LAN. Like, what a vibe that used to be. The whole reason why COD console gaming was so much fun was we went to EGE and those guys were screaming their lungs out. And Energy Esports had the best COD team, and you were just going there going like, what the hell are these oaks on? Because they're just smashing everyone. And that's the type of thing that like gets our gears going, and you want to be a part of that. So I think that's what we're trying to re-achieve now, even in a world that is so closed off and online at the moment. We need to reinvent that culture, and we need to start by making sure that we're appointing the correct people to represent those communities and enabling them.
All right, I can respect that. I think maybe, like you say, once the things open up again, for me, it feels like South Africa's gone back to normal to a certain extent. But
Yeah.
once it opens up again, it could be a good time to try reinvent that land culture, because, like you say, in my opinion, land culture
Sure.
was kind of lost for the last 2 to 3 years after the big boom in 2016
Absolutely.
and 2017, and all that money came, when people weren't just like, oh, we play games now. It's like, we are professionals, we making R1 million play that. It fucked things up so much. Like, all great achievements that these people
Really
did
did.
hosting those big tournaments, but in terms of community mentality, I mean, Dota, now that it's like quote unquote dead in SA, now they're like, oh, okay, let's go support streams, let's talk about our games, let's be active in the Facebook group and interact. And people are like, oh,
Yeah.
now you want
We're
to do
doing it
this.
backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for
we're
sure.
doing
Like,
it backwards for sure. Like, I think South Africans, we really are a very talented group of individuals. Like, and I think the very unfortunate thing is that geographically, if we were literally copy pasted our little community into Europe, we would have learned a lot more from those mistakes, and we would have had the ability to rebuild from those mistakes really quickly. And I think also the scene would have been a lot bigger. So, I mean, back in those years, definitely for sure, I think when we had those big booms, it screwed it up quite a bit, because I don't think, number one, people expected it. And number two, I don't think it was correctly managed when it came to, you know, collaborating, like actually for the greater good, if I can put it that way.
100%.
There wasn't a greater good. There wasn't a, like, let's ask the opinion of our rivals, because that's what everybody was to everybody as rivals. How can we make this a better experience for all? And I think if those things were ironed out, which I think it is a lot more now. I mean, for us, again, a really big part of being in dynamic is collaborating. And I want to make it known that for me, yes, we will have in-game rivalries, we will have underdogs, we will have people that own us, we will have people that wreck us, and we will, celebrate early if we're 16-1 down. And that is exactly like the types of things that happen in esports that still makes it a competitive environment. But at the end of the day, when it comes to the org management, for me, I want to work with Goliath, I want to work with Energy, I want to work with Royalty, I want to work with Nibble, I want to work with ATK, I want to work with, anybody, like literally anybody in the scene. For me, if there is a reason for us to work together, I don't see why not. It's really just, for me, if we can build something that works together with the community. And I know it's wishful thinking, like, don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, we can at least try. And that's the goal.
Are you telling me, Julia, that the the 3 different million-rand tournaments in 1 year, dick measuring against one another, was not the play for South African esports.
It was not the play, guys. It was not the play. And quite frankly, like, I think we all learned from that. Like,
Yeah.
if anybody says otherwise, if anybody says otherwise, then I feel like it's just a little bit defensive. Like, obviously, this is just my opinion, don't get me wrong, and I definitely wasn't in the core of any of those tournaments or know the ins and the outs, but from an outsider's perspective, from someone that was so passionate about the scene, from a community member's perspective, because that's all I was at that point. Like, I just felt like there was just too much at once. If we took all of that, events and smashed it out over a 3-year period, we could actually still be busy with some of those events.
Right.
Instead of just having a completely dead year, 2019, 2020, where, our esports athletes are literally going like, well, listen, guys, I kind of have to retire at the age of 25 because I need to pay rent. And, like, this is not paying my rent. And I'm having to go, well, I physically can't get a reason to pay you more because you guys are competing in anything. Now, whose fault is that? Not mine or theirs. Now, what must I do? It's a very heartbreaking conversation to have with people, especially people that are so passionate about the scene and who's been in it for so long.
No, that's fair, 100%. And I think, like, let me actually be nice here to those 3 guys who, the VSs, the ESLs, and the medal states who hosted those big tournaments, because it leads perfectly into the next part of this conversation, is that it's not really their fault that they thought that was the way in esports, because at that point in esports globally, that is what all the talk.
It made
esports
sense.
is blowing up. Esports is going to be the next big thing. In the next 10 years, esports is going to be the biggest industry. But as we've gone through and you actually get involved, you realize that, sure, ESL stage is very fancy, but how much money are they actually making, So if you hear, like, and this, I'm going to bring this question directly back to you. So if you hear how org owners speak internationally, there was that big article written by Cecilia Di Anastasio about the esports bubble. She spoke about TO, she spoke about orgs and stuff. And I can't remember who was the org owner. If he went on record, he was anonymous. Maybe it was Complexity's owner. I don't remember. That he was saying what a struggle it is being an esports org, even though they're playing at these big tournaments and stuff. I mean, Fnatic just fucking burn money left, right, and center as an org. They just need to close down at this point. Sorry, Fnatic. Like Rich from H2K, what is that? I don't think they even exist anymore. He was complaining in the LCS or the LES, wherever his team played, there's no money that can be made with Riot agreement and stuff. So money is a big conversation in esports from the TO and org side specifically. Players are canning it, who are the pro players, and the developers are killing it from like Epic and Valve and shit. But orgs and TO struggles. From the org side, what is the conversation like with investors? What are the things that they're looking to get into, and what are the things you told them where you can give them value back in form, in the terms of what they, I don't know, what looking to do, looking to achieve, looking to get back?
Of course. So for me, the first conversation was that obviously they approached me. So again, I was in a very fortunate position where I didn't have to go and set up this whole business proposal for it to make happen. I already had a blueprint as to how it could go. And luckily they already had an in the South African esports community, and they know how to make it work. My biggest thing was I couldn't speak for org owners and what they've experienced, because none of that stuff's made public. So quite frankly, I don't know how any of the other org owners do it. I just know that it is sheer will and determination, firstly, and if you want to make something work, then you will. But at the same time, when you are dealing with so many people that is dependent off of an org, or that you reply resources, you can't just cut that off. So you have to really understand human relations and just understand that people are technically your employee in a sense, and they also have a responsibility. And my first goal and motive was to speak to Warren from ATK Arena, who, as you know, has gone further than any other org owner has gone, and built this amazing venue in Cape Town, and that in itself is a pretty penny. Whilst also owning international esports teams, being able to send people internationally. They have their own host of esports teams. They even host their own events. So if you can just imagine, like, from that perspective, that was my first stop, is to make sure that I spoke to Warren and I understood the ins and the outs of the business, and I understood where my limitations were, especially when it came to timeline. Now, ATK is where they are over a 3-year period, and it comes with sponsors. It 100% does. and it comes with a return on investment as a service, because currently that's all we are. So esports is a novelty internationally. It's something that, well, it's a novelty locally, actually. It's something very real internationally, where corporates go, obviously where the big money is at, have massive marketing budgets, and they're like, oh, I want to gamify my product. Let's put gamer on it and sell it to gamers, because we have so many gamers in South Africa. Now, we don't have any stats of how many gamers we have in South Africa. So then people like myself and other big org owners that you would find in a quick Google search gets called up by these corporates going like, we want all your gamers to buy our product. Now help us make it happen. And those are the types of conversations that make you go like, hold on a second. If there's so many of these corporate businesses that want to get involved with esports, but we don't have anything to give them to get involved with, then we can actually start. How many brands physically messaged me to work with myself and to be like, Julia, we want you to promote this product on your stream. So imagine me times 10. Now that's already something that, you know, can start getting the ball rolling. And that's why, another reason why content creators are so important in the local esports scene, because they are a direct content machine. They're a content bridge of the gap of these like gamers, which is their target audience, and then the media gap, which is the bridge, which is the streamers, which is the content, the orgs, the TOs, and then obviously the actual corporate itself and the product. Sorry, my camera does this sometimes. Sorry about that. So yeah, and at the end of the day, like, I needed to understand exactly how corporates worked, and understand how markets worked, and I had to understand why people pay for sponsorships and how much. And sure fact, I got a bunch of it wrong from the get-go. I assumed so much about the esports industry that is completely non-existent locally. Like, it is true. It's the truth. It's completely non-existent. So now that I know that, at least I can start saying like, okay, well, if there is no blueprint, then let's help create something that people would be proud of, to say, okay, here is actually a corporate deal for someone that someone would be proud of, to be like, yeah, they deserve that. That's a good product. That's a good service. And we're supporting that. And that is a return on investment. So yeah, I think there's a lot of knowledge about esports that's not really well known, specifically locally. It's like doing market research. It's just not something that people talk about. So my first thing was to like speak to someone that's already been in the game and that's dealt with the hard times, have understood what is needed to be done, and then from there build my budget off of what I can project if I was to land XYZ as my sponsor and get them XYZ as return. So it was very much like a bit of a weigh bridge, where you needed to make sure that, okay, I need to fill up my arsenal with a whole bunch of things that could actually return an investment, and then the types of investments I need to get these people to be happy, and for these people to be happy,
Right.
and then only I can have an org. And then the constant growth after that is to like slowly start increasing both parts of the scale and keep like weighing it out until you get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's pretty much the phase that we're still currently in with DNMK.
All right, that makes sense. I think like, I mean, ATK Arena is like a perfect example of like, I think they've done like the South African business model in terms of like what esports has been representing here for so long to the next level. Because like, I feel like again, Bravado, when they were at the top of the game before, when they wanted to poach players or get players or whatever, they could do it because there was no real competition in terms of what Bravado could offer and what other people could offer in terms of what esports was 5 years ago, let's say.
And it was hardware, it was sponsors, right?
Yeah.
It was hardware and sponsors. So
it
just shows you like that was enough for people to be like, yeah, easy, let's poach, let's go for it. Like, and poach is such a hectic word. Like, just for people watching this, like, there was a period of poaching. Like, let's all not like lie about it. But I mean, at the time, again, it made sense. Like, there wasn't enough business solid structure for these guys. It was all a transition phase. And like, if you look back at it, like, I totally understand it, because who told them no? Like, it's a bunch of, esports players that want the best out of their deal. And quite frankly, they're putting in 8 to 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, For what? No money, no payment. And then Goliath comes in and like switches up the game and says, well, we are paying salaries now. And then we're going like, okay, crap, now everybody needs to start paying salaries if you're competing versus Goliath. And if Goliath is losing to you and you're technically a better org, then what stops those players from going to Goliath and stepping down, and all of a sudden Goliath is the best org in South Africa? So like it really does come to, like I said, that scale. Like you need to be very like vigilant as to what's happening in the scene, and you need to understand what people are offering, and you need to understand also how to relay that message from an educational perspective to a corporate that is willing to listen. And I think that is something that I'm very happy with Predator Gaming. Like I have never met a hardware brand that is so just focused on esports as a whole that they're just like, listen, I'm marketing South Africa. I understand how to sell to Incredible Connection, and I know how to take pretty pictures for magazines. I don't understand your scene, so we're hiring you to do all of it, and you must just go with it. Here's our budgets, here's our things, and just make it happen. And that's something that I appreciate so much, because I got so much freedom. I was literally working in the ASA offices as their, brand representative, as their and brand ambassador, and I was literally going like, guys, you need to do Rage. Why? Here's the points, here's the pros, here's the cons. What do we do at Rage? Here's what you have to do at Rage. Here's the competitions. I set up every single piece of that entire Rage stand. Like it was sleepless nights. Like I had my own streaming schedule. I had, Fortnite competitions running on the side. I physically installed Fortnite on every single one of those machines, updated their settings, made sure all the monitors were set on 144 hertz. Like those are all the like micro things that even from a corporate perspective, they oversee. They don't understand why we need cooling, why we need aircon, why we need this amount of keyboard space, why we need an adjustable gaming chair at the stand. Like those are all spaces where they could have saved money, and they probably wouldn't have had that if it wasn't for an esports person telling them why.
Right.
And I think that's again why you need to understand, like there is a bit of a scale. Like there's a lot of education that goes in on the side, and there's a lot of reasoning that goes into it, and also a lot of learning from the corporate side.
Right, for sure. But like, I think this is where I have my own personal level of disconnect, and I know you're coming from a DMNK background, so you can't speak on behalf of everybody. But like we said, Bravado used to poach with hardware and things like that. When the BVD name back in the day, Goliath came in, they changed the game, they started paying salaries and stuff. I mean, now ATK has blown them all out of the water, sending teams overseas and doing this and doing that. But if I look numbers wise, again, in like esports terms, we haven't really grown that much, but the ante is so much higher in terms of what the investment's coming in. So now on the other side of it, what are we giving back to make all these people say, listen, yeah, this is why we need to be there,
Exactly. So that is again something that I want to pride DNMK in so much, and a lot of that is what you guys will see in 2021. Like we only started in May, the 20th of May this year.
Right.
So we've only been like really up and coming over the last like 10 months or so. Like that's when I could say, okay, DNMK was 10 months ago. So, I mean, there's so much more for us to still do, and definitely community is one of the biggest things. The one thing that I can highlight is that I saw an opportunity with the Apex Legends community where Tendo, again, this is why I'm so glad that I trusted my gut and my instincts of finding a community, representative, came to me and said, Jules, we have this opportunity, we have this person that can give us custom codes to a server, and EA is in contact now with him. Now, this is a really big deal to me. Like, I literally was like, up, I don't care. Like, it's 7 p.m. at night. I'm like on calls, setting up meetings. Like, I didn't sleep that night. Like, it was just 100% just understanding, what is Apex, like what is missing, what do these codes mean to the community, and how can we make it work. Now, ultimately what happened is we set up these Apex scrims, and they sold out like every week, and we were just like, okay, cool, well, we don't have to do much more to this. Let's just make sure that we just have the scrims full all the time, and make sure that we cast it and get people some exposure and hopefully grow the community in that sense. And very soon after that, we found out, well, people are actually quite keen to participate and make this a little bit more of a league, a little bit more competitive. So we start saying, oh, listen, if you're a community member and you're keen to sponsor a prize pool, because physically we don't have the numbers to get any of our sponsors to drop 20K on this league that we don't know how it's going to do or if it's going to continue. So if you guys are keen to sponsor, and we started seeing like 1,000 rand here, 1,000 rand here, 1,000 rand here, like complete random people. And we were like, yo, do you want some like a shout out, like a business sponsor? Do you have a logo? They're like, no, I just want to play the game. Just like here's 1,000 rand. Just put it on like the spot, whatever. And we were just like, okay, well that just shows you that there's a community behind this. And that's when I went to 80K and I was like, listen guys, I can't run this myself anymore. This has become too big. Let's collaborate. You guys run the back end of it. We'll run the marketing of it. And we'll just create a WhatsApp group and just get people to do things. And we did that for like almost 2 months. And soon after that, we contacted EA directly and said, listen, here's our 2-month report. This is what we've been doing. We would like to officially do this for South Africa for you guys. Please, can we? And we said yes, and they took the conversation further, and we took it away from the two orgs so that both DNMK and 80K can still, be unbiased, but still make sure that the community runs itself. And that just shows you, like, that's step one. And we want to do that for all of it. So Valorant, Rainbow Six Siege, Call of Duty, those are titles close to my heart because those are people that I currently have in DNMK and I've already started the conversation up in each of those titles. But I want to further understand Fortnite and FIFA and sim racing and so on, and see what other orgs are doing and collaborate again. So I think there is a lot more community driven focus is happening in the future, and for sure from a streaming content creation perspective too. So you will see more of that too. But definitely for now, what we're just trying to achieve is make sure that everybody within the DNMK banner is happy over a long period of time, because that's also another thing missing in esports. You know what I'm saying? You need to get that player retention. That's the creme de la creme here, is having people that represent your orgs for multiple years. And just having that loyalty to know that, okay, cool, I have a talent and I want to build off of that.
Yeah, that's always a thing in esports. A year is like, you're making me sign a year-long contract. That's so long. I mean, I kind of agree with the players in that sense because it is an eternity in esports. But from a brand point of view, I get you as well. That story about the Apex Legends thing, that's so awesome. I mean, grassroots is a buzz term we used to love to throw around this podcast, like late 2018, early 2018. But like, that's a proper grassroots effort. The community came together and made a quote-unquote esport. It's fucking amazing, right? Like, yo,
yeah.
That's the good
and
shit.
Now there's literally, I think, 10 Apex Legends streamers that I can count off the top of my head that is actually getting like plus 20 viewers. Now I know in South African terms is a lot. Internationally, not so much. But to consistently retain 20 viewers at any given time of the day, no matter when it's like after hours, these orgs are literally streaming midday today.
Yeah.
We had 6 or 7 Apex Legends streamers streaming today, and they all had plus 20 viewers. And I was like, that's pretty cool. Like, that's really cool. I'm very proud of that. And even if that continues, like, maybe that is the peak of that. But at the end of the day, that is, like you said, it's a grassroots development effort that paid out. So we know that we can build something off of that if we wanted to supercharge that with a sponsor, for example, and know that we have a community love that we have already built, and we can build off of that.
No, for sure. And like, Apex Legends community is one that I quite like a lot because like you say, the way they come up with is a whole community effort. I mean, the kind of players we have, I mean, DMNK, y'all play super high in tournaments, overseas tournaments in the Middle East region. I mean, fucking 80K Arena has been winning freaking overseas tournaments and stuff. So we have that level of competition where they could have egos, but they still, like, you interact with the guys on Twitter and stuff, and they still have that, like, humbleness about them. CSGO motherfuckers, take note, by the way. But yeah, it's like so great, it's so great.
I think the biggest thing about these players, and definitely something that I love about my team, is You know, they were a team that I competed against when I was playing competitive Apex, like beginning 2019. And they like were so aggressive, and I used to think of these guys like, oh, they're so cocky, and you know, whatever, like if you play versus them. But then, you know, you get to know these guys and it's a sheer passion for esports. It's like they were all competitive, Overwatch competitive, Battlefield competitive, CS:GO, like they've done it all already, and that's why they're at Apex Legends now. And I think that knowing that they have so much, you know, like such a mindset behind esports already, like they're consistently placing top 5 in the Europe, Middle East, and Africa groups, and that's amazing. They're competing versus the likes of, you know, Navi, you know, really big
Right.
orgs that you would be
Pros.
like, what the hell? Yeah, like I can't believe my name is next to Navi's, like on a list on Wikipedia ever. Like that is insane to me. And these guys, like literally, I had a meeting with them today. Um, and I was literally like, guys, how are you feeling about your ALGS achievement? Because they've qualified now for the finals, which is
Nice.
basically if you come even 7th, you make like almost 5,000 US dollars, which is quite a lot for these guys. And it can happen in any order. There's all the possibility for them to be able to win as well, because that's just the nature of Apex Legends. So if they win, they take home sub 300, 500,000 rand just for this, you know, event that they've been practicing so long for. And I was like, guys, you guys are playing with like 180 ping. Like, how are you guys feeling about this? Like, it's not easy. I play Apex in my free time. I'm like gold 2 and they're fucking diamond. And you're just like, how are you guys even ranking? Like, it's insanity to me. But the point is that they were just like, look, we just want to have a stable internet, like a gig line, which obviously I'm providing them. And I was like, listen, I'm getting you guys a boot camp center. You guys are going to stay in the same apartment. Like, I'm getting you guys like transport. I'm getting you guys food. Like, don't stress about it. And they're like, Jules, you're stressed. Like, we can place like top 5 in our own homes as well. It's fine. It's like, no load shedding. You guys are coming over. We have generators. I just sorted everything out to them. Like, so I'm stressing more about it than they are. And it really is quite humble to be able to see, you know, people that just completely on the back foot, like just 180 ping, you know, playing with crappy internet and just so keen to place. So yeah, it's great.
No, you love to see it. You love to see it. Much love to your
You
guys'
do.
team and ATK's team. Fans of those
For
guys too.
sure,
They
for sure.
slaying it. But now to I kind of
Yeah.
switch gears a bit. Now my criticism I often have of the big dogs in esports, like your
Mm-hmm.
Goliaths, your Bravados, not your Bravados a bit different now. I guess your Goliaths, your Bravados, your ATKs, even from the TO side, your Metal States, your VSs and stuff. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
a lot's done to keep the current set of like the echo chamber in esports going, like hype up the top players, the top PCs, the this, the that. But again, in numbers, our esports scene hasn't really grown what it was 3 years
Yeah.
ago, beginning 2017, in terms of people tuning into streams and stuff. So from a value point, that I already have criticism on. But from terms of how we expand, because current set of esports in South Africa is very white, middle class to upper class. There's a big economic barrier still in esports, and it's always been the issue in esports in South Africa. But there's been nothing really. I haven't seen anybody thinking, okay, you know what, we're only catering to the 1% here. This is not a feasible business plan going forward, etc. So from DMNK side, do you all have plans to kind of expand, maybe, going to schools, doing talks about esports, raising awareness from esports to the masses, to the bigger demographic than just the rich white kids who keen to play games?
Absolutely. So, unfortunately, I cannot speak to you about it yet because it is under NDA.
Ah,
Because it is a really big project, and it is something that I've been speaking about to investors and to venue owners, if I can put it that way, and schools and universities. Regarding bursaries, curriculums, and international entities that already have such you know, efforts. But and this is again it. Like I really like listening to the community because I am only one human and I will make mistakes. Like I can't listen to all the different avenues. Like, I know there's been some issues in Fortnite recently. I don't even know what it's about because I literally cannot find a single article that gives me a quick crash course and then I know everything. Like, I know there's like players that have been racist and like, you know, all of those types of things, and that's a big no to me. Like, that's an absolute no-go. And those types of adversities are the first thing that we want to, shun out of esports, especially with DNMK. So yes, we want to make it possible, we want to make it accessible, and that's the first thing that's important to us. In our country, and specifically in like the state of our economy in our country, it's impossible to expect all the top orgs in South Africa to drop everything that they're doing to just, make enough money to continue their org legacy, to be able to make things so accessible. But at the same time, I feel like there is a responsibility in any industry to make sure that you're doing something for the greater good. And I do think that there is some elements of thought that can go into that, level of thinking at the very least. So know that we are thinking about it, but not only just thinking about it, but we are acting on it. It is, a topic that I would still like to keep under wraps because there is a lot of talks that I'm having with people that are quite high profile, and that are obviously international clients of ours that we would like to, honor correctly and do business with correctly as they're known to do it. And that is something that I also like to pride DNMK in, and is that we don't want to make false promises either. So if I tell you something on the podcast now and it doesn't happen, it's gonna freaking break my heart. You know what I mean? Like, so I think it's just know that even from the Goliath Gaming, Bravado Gaming, a lot of those guys also, you have to think of the people that are currently in those orgs. A lot of them didn't have the correct hardware, the correct internet, or anything, and they were placing really high in games that they were playing with. In my Apex team alone, 2 guys were playing on like ancient computers. The one was on like, I think it was a 60 hertz monitor or something, wrecking international ranking, like doing amazing stuff, and just never got the opportunity to ever upgrade their stuff. Also coming from, a less wealthier background. And I think that's also something to highlight, is that all of us in South Africa have a responsibility to make sure that we, give credit where credit is due, but also at the same time, we all do have to survive. And it is a tough spot to be in. It's like a rock and a hard place, but it's especially a space where I like to open my ears up to community and see, who is struggling, and find out for myself, and start speaking to that person or speaking to that community, and start stepping up and representing it properly. So yes, I totally agree with you in that line of talking anyway.
All right, I can get behind that. I'm glad to see you are thinking about it. You guys have plans. I'll be keeping a keen eye. If you like to be at the podcast, Julia, there'll be another one. I'm kidding.
I'm down. Like, for me, just know that, like, if it's something that I'm passionate about and it doesn't happen, like, it hurts me more than it hurts you, because it's something that I'm dreaming about. Like, I'm physically like laying awake at night, like dreaming about this utopian esports world, and I know that not all of it's possible. So you have to sort of, cut down where you can and like make those sacrifices. Because for me, if I was to have my way in all aspects of DNMK, well, it would be a completely different org. We might be like a mini 100 Thieves already, but like, that's not feasible monetarily or in the current economic state and what we are currently as an org, as a country, as from an infrastructure perspective, from a corporate identity perspective. Like, we don't get recognized as an esports country at all, and that's not any esports org to blame. That's not any TO to blame. That is just, it is, we're so grassroots that even the word grassroots is still not possible for us here. So we're still going back in time a little bit, and not that back. Like, we do have great talent, but yeah, like I said, I can ramble on about this for hours. So stop me.
Now, the reason I asked that question was because I think it's a very important question. Because for me, it seems like if I look at ATK Arena's business plan, right? When they originally announced the shop, Warren hated us from day one in this podcast because we said his business will never make money. You're catering to the ultra 1%. His whole marketing thing was, we have 45,000 rand PCs of the best monitors ever. This, that, the fucking thing is based in Claremont. It's like, okay, so esports already has this issue, and this is not a criticism on Warren because it's bigger than 80k. This is what esports has been in South Africa for so long, where it's pigeonholed onto the small little thing. It's like a disregard for the actual fucking landscape in South Africa, where our masses is, where the people are going to come from, where a lot of our talent is probably lying untapped. So yeah, I'm glad you guys are thinking about it. You're doing something about it.
Like I said, I do think that it is hard to cater for, and if you look at the economic structure of our country as a whole, esports doesn't fit into that very well from the get-go. And I feel like that is something that all community members, all esports enthusiasts needs to recognize. Even for me, like, I didn't come from a wealthy household at all, and I had to save up my Christmas money. My birthdays weren't for birthday parties or whatever. It was a new hard drive. It was a graphics card update. It was a new PC case because mine was like literally physically falling apart. Like, those are the types of things that we were struggling, and it wasn't a scenario of like, oh, hold on, mom, I'm playing clannies. Like, that was never the conversation. If I ever said that to my Afrikaans mother, I would have get like thrown with a chair, like straight up. And you know, it was a privilege to play games. It really, really was. And I think that it still really much is. And we can't, but it's not just esports, it's technology as a whole. It's accessibility to technology, to social media. The cell phone is freaking expensive. I can't expect my entire country to have an iPhone to play games on, to play Fortnite mobile on. Like, those are all issues that is a lot larger than us as a community even. And the best that we can do is take people that is you know, really excited to get a part of esports and to build something that people are proud of and grow the community from the inside outward, instead of trying to like plug holes wherever we can. So I'm happy for what Warren did, because it showcased what we are capable of, and it also showcased growth. 80k Shack was not in Cavendish Square. It was in the stadium on Main, where there's literally like a bowling alley and Tiger, like the dingiest student club in the whole of Cape Town. Like, it wasn't in the most, you know, pish posh garden. And yes, obviously he's gonna try get the best esports, and I'm not speaking for Warren here, but I'm just saying, if I was in that position, I would be so proud to walk into the space where someone like myself, also coming from, you know, a tougher background, like really going like, I'm so passionate about this esports, I'll do whatever I can, I'll save up my money because I want to play on this types of hardware. That is accessibility. And I think at the end of the day, we should be proud of that as well as a community. So yeah, I do agree there needs to be those thoughts, and it needs to be larger than that. And it shouldn't consume your only goal ever is to be bigger without thinking about the rest of the community. I do think that it should be something that's more of an overflowing effect, if I can put it that way.
I can get that to a certain extent, but again, like you say, it can't be your only way because there needs to be a balance of both. But
exactly,
I haven't seen it yet, genuinely speaking, from a lot of the orgs. I think ACGL, from a TO perspective, I can say, okay, this org, I've seen them do some things here. Kasi Esports out here doing the most. Obviously, that's their context. So even us, we would never do it the way they could. But yeah, I like to see the improvement come. Hear the opinions on all this kind of stuff. We'll see how esports continues to expand, to grow, to change. Because I feel like my opinion is the next 5 years will be very different esports from the way it is today.
Absolutely.
Then, obviously, esports has had its culture or whatever, but I think the growth is changing, because like you mentioned earlier, the Fortnite community, right? If I look at how obviously the debacles that's going on there with racism and how they react to this kind of stuff, like obviously, and the scale that they're reacting. I mean, a game like Fortnite the Fortnite scene is way bigger than any other esports scene in South Africa. Sure, Fortnite's only been out for a few years, but it's crazy. The fucking somebody just tweets some stupid meme and there's like 300 likes and retweets, and like the scale that they functioning on is very different already. But in terms
Yeah.
of the reason you brought up Fortnite because of the racism and stuff going on there, I wanted to ask you a question. I remember, and I'm gonna paraphrase here because I don't remember the tweet exactly, but a few months ago, I remember you making a tweet about you like it was something along the lines, or you like quite tired of like every time you go into a game, there's
Yes.
this level of sexism, there's this, there's that. Now, because I know you and follow you in the scene for a long time, and I know this fucking scene, I know
Mhm.
how like okay, before I even get to part two of the question, what is the motivation behind that? Like, if you want to share some experiences, not forced to or anything like
Sure.
that, but like what got you
I
that click and you're
actually
like, listen
have.
here, I'm done with this shit.
So, so actually, I wanted to make a follow-up tweet on that literally 2 days ago.
Oh,
Talking about that again. I was playing CS and the matchmaking system's broken. Let's just put that out there. That should actually be the title of this podcast, to be honest,
right.
because it truly is. And I'm Aliem. I solo queue sometimes because I enjoy Apex. Apex lol. Apex in my brain. I enjoy CS. I solo queue in Apex too, but I solo queued in CS and I was just having some fun. And I got a lobby with a bunch of DMG guys, and they were clearly very upset because their previous game they played versus a bunch of Aliem Supremes, and they got smacked. And apparently there was two people in the opposing team that were in the previous game. So these guys were talking under each other, and generally when I join a game, I don't immediately speak because I can usually suss out by the general voices and conversation of people if they will be nice enough to be like, yo, cool, whatever, or at least cooperative, because CS is a team game,
Right.
like you can't
Comms is so important.
like just do whatever the hell you want to do, like at least not at legendary Eagle Master level. Like people are gonna wreck you and you're not gonna have a good time just running around with a Uzi, because no one even does that in CS. So I was playing and this guy started saying that these guys are so much better than us. We should all like just like fuck our lives. Like basically, it's a waste of the game. And I was like, we haven't even started our pistol round. Like surely we can like give this a go. So I asked them, listen, what rank are you guys? And they were like, oh, DMG. And the one's like Nova and like whatever. And they were like, and you? And I was like, Aliem. And they're like, oh, boosted. First thing, because I'm a girl,
Right.
boosted. And I was like, dope. So I've actually D-ranked to Aliem. I used to be global, so ouch. But anyway, played the game, and the first like 4 rounds they kept just rushing B, and I was just like, guys, you guys aren't gonna win versus Aliens like this. Let's reset. I'll call some strats and we follow. And this dude just straight up calls me the C word. I'm the most horrible person in the game. Blocks me, mutes me, and his team's like, whoa, 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 dude, like you don't have to be this hectic. And he's like, yo, I'm not gonna listen to a chick, like starts screaming, starts calling me the C word again. And I'm just like, okay, guys, I'm not gonna call anymore. Hope you guys have a good game. I'm just gonna mute. This is not a constructive team effort anymore, but I'll still try my best, whatever. So I'm using like text comms, which is like push B, like hold back,
Right.
whatever, like text comms. And this guy is like getting so frustrated with me just using text comms, like thinking that I'm harassing him in some form, and just starts going off again. And it was the most like horrible hour I had to endure, if it was even an hour. We got 16-0. It was probably like 30 minutes.
Oof.
And I was just sitting there like, what's the point of me playing games? Like, surely this is not, like, I do this for a living, quote unquote, like, how must it feel for another girl or any other person to come into the esports scene playing a CS game and working hard for their rank and then just being bashed off the bats, just being called the C word. And I've heard some really racist things in CS lobbies as well, homophobic things, just sexist things, like horrible stuff. And it's not like, I genuinely don't stand for it, so I will retaliate a little bit. Like I won't stand for people calling me whatever they want to be called. Like, let it be known I'm not having this, and then mute them, like, because what else am I gonna do? It's like fighting fire with fire. So yeah, after that tweet I had about 4 games of that back to back, and that was the worst night of CS I've had in a long time. And I don't full stack anymore, because I mean a lot of my friends are either pro players, comping, stratting, doing something else. So I solo queue sometimes, or I'm like with 1 or 2 other friends, and we just get the most horrible horrible people, and it's not just in CS, it happens everywhere.
Right.
European Apex Legends lobbies, European Valorant lobbies, local lobbies, Bahrain servers. It doesn't matter where you are. It's everywhere. And I think generally it showcases a mindset of the general youth in the world right now just being extremely frazzled and confused and overwhelmed with social media and news, and just generally getting bad news after bad news after bad news, and going into like a turmoil of toxicity. And esports is the perfect place for that to be taken out of, because you're hiding behind a screen, a keyboard, you don't have a webcam, no one knows where you live or what your real name is. And I think that is such a dangerous place to be unhappy. It is such a dangerous place to be unhappy, and it's something that, as much as adversity, poverty, and all those other issues that we have in esports, I also want to focus on the physical, mental health aspects of people that we deal with esports, because so many people are genuinely fully unhappy, unmotivated, and that is scary. That is more scary to me than, people that come from a loving home that is, unable to work with esports. For me, someone that is thinking about taking their own life, that's a lot worse for me. So when I hear a lot of that toxicity and how someone speaks to a woman that way, it makes me think, like, what's happening in their personal life? What are they going through that makes them think that it is even okay to speak to a female that way that they don't know? And what makes them so threatened? So yeah, I think there's a lot more for us to think about than just that. And I had a lot of those conversations in DM, so I'm sure you might have noticed my Twitter is not as active as my Instagram. So what I usually do is I would make a statement and say DM me. So I would rather have my conversations on DM, because I feel like constantly having your opinion open for discussion is also so negative sometimes. Like, you just can't get people to focus on the issue at hand. And if I can change maybe 10 people's opinion that messages me on DM, or speak to 10 people that's been affected by it, and rather get through it together, or like queue a scrims lobby together, then that to me is a win, versus having fights on Twitter and like just wasting my time. So yeah.
So now there's a lot of interesting things to respond to there. So, like, obviously everybody knows me. I talk about racism and stuff in the scene, and I think at the time of this video comes out, this podcast, which will be sometime later in this week when me and Julia are recording, I probably have another video out about racism. And it's just like, this I wasn't gonna make an offhand comment in there, but I think it's a very important comment there, is that I think, and I talk a lot about racism, I don't talk a lot about sexism in the scene, because again, I'm a guy, what do I really know about it? But my honest opinion in what I've seen, and this is just fucking small pockets here or there, I actually think sexism in gaming, and obviously South African context I speak for racism, obviously internationally I don't know how it goes for racism and shit, but globally in gaming, sexism is like disgustingly rampant too. Like, it is so bad, like it's unbelievable, and the level of harassment is also different. Like, again, not trying to shortchange the racism that happens, but okay, somebody's gonna come call me a coolie, or there's a K-bomb getting dropped, there's this or that, but like the way, like, so I was watching a clip of, like, I think it was some Valorant game, some like top tier streamer or something was streaming, and the way this guy is talking to her, it's like, it's not just you say, oh, F you female, B word, C word, whatever, and done. It's like, it's a constant thing. You go on and on and on and on. It's like,
I think I know exactly what clip you're talking about. If someone even like the thing is, for me, and the thing that prompted me to typing that tweet wasn't going saying, oh, feel sorry for me, I'm a victim. It's me going and acknowledging that we have a problem in the scene, and that we should not stand for it. I commended those two guys that stood up for me and went like, dude, like, calm down, you're making a fool out of yourself.
Right.
Because he proper is. And after that, like, he's not looking for attention from me, because clearly not. Like, he's, throwing me off. He's trying to find attention from the other three guys in the CS guy, going like, haha, you're so right, dude. She's such a C word. Like, no, like, that's, like, no one does that. And once you get that, like, snap to reality, the first thing they do is they mute themselves, or they abandon the game. It's because, like, they don't have anything else to go off of. The
Right.
one time I've had a guy actually apologize to me like mid-game because we called a pause and the guys were just like, dude, just leave. Like if you don't leave, we're gonna kick you or apologize because that was not cool. And that was the best thing for me. I was solo queuing and I was just like,
Yo,
see? and
love
like
to see it.
and I top scored after that and I was just like, dude, like you don't have to be angry with me just because I'm female. Like I'm having a good time here. I want to play the game. I've been playing this game. I have 5,000 hours on my account. You're fucking lucky to have me in your team. Like that's how it should be seen, you know? Um and vice versa. I think it can go so bad. Like you say sexism meaning females being degraded online. How about men degrading men online? How many times does that not happen? And also, you know, kids, little kids that go into the first thing you hear is squeaker,
Right, right,
or
right.
like, you know, the first thing you do is like you put this kid down at what points? How
Yes.
can he ever become a prodigy esports player if the first thing he's being taken away from is his confidence?
Dude,
And like
In
that's
Dota they cry, oh, Dota's a dead game. We have new players, all that stuff. The minute a new guy gets in the game, oh, shut the fuck up, fucking noob, get out of the game, get out of the game. I was like, oh my god. And then they complain your game's dying, like there's no new
exactly.
players.
Yeah.
Uh,
So there are all these elements, and I think again, we can't change the world, you know, we can't, but we can change their opinion of a few people that's maybe taking the back seat when something like this happens, and then next time something like this happens, male, female, um, black, colored, Indian, white, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you are. If someone is mean to another person online in game, you should call a pause and be like, bro, GTFO, go sort out your anger issues, go drink a glass of cold Coca-Cola, jump into the pool, have a shower, and when you're done, you can come rejoin this lobby. Or you can apologize and we won't kick you. Straight up. Like, that's how it's supposed to be, and we have the power to do that. And if any of those silly assholes that do that online actually watch this, just know that, you know, there are people that you can speak to if you're sad, and if you feel like mistreating people, then that is not the way to go, because honestly it does come down to that. People that are mean
mm,
don't necessarily have the energy, the strength to talk about what is bothering them, and I think that is something that people need to understand. Like, it's the first thing we learn in pre-primary school when you get bullied, you know. Like, it's the same thing, except it gets pushed so far in esports because you have so much to hide behind,
mm,
and I don't think that's fair. So yes, that tweet was basically me just acknowledging a problem, and just saying to people that even me, I'm fed up and I'm done with it. Like, I am not having a good time in it, and I don't want to interact with a community that is treating me that way or any other person that way. So yeah.
right. All right, I can respect that. I think already in a sense you do a lot in terms of destigmatizing gaming, in terms of that, from that perspective, like, oh, guys, like, oh, this guy, oh, you're a girl, you're a booster, oh, this, you that, because like, no, this lady, she's a woman, she's been playing for 10 years, she's been better than you for all this time, and now she owns an org where CS players are playing for her, you know. So just existing, you already like, making a statement. But from why I found that tweet interesting, right? And there were similar tweets I saw on, like, from Rob Hart and Anthrax as well. They were talking about, oh, toxicity in this community. Sometimes it's so hard to work in it and stuff. And from a certain extent, yo, bros, I get it. Like, this community is toxic. I'm one of them. So it's hard to work in the industry. But this is my question I put out a lot, is that what, like, so I know obviously from a DM point of view you have this perspective where this thing happens, you make a statement, you'll talk to people, that's work. By the way, I quantify that as work because you actually were dealing with the issue to a certain extent. But from a social front, in terms of DMNK, the Bish brand, what are you doing, or wanting to be doing, or wanting to be seen done to combat these issues of the racism, the sexism, etc., that's happening in the scene? Because from my point of view, and I'm also, maybe I'm not in a minority, but I have a very strong view on these things, because like, I'm tired of it already. Like, I'm sick and fucking tired of it. Until this shit gets dealt with, I don't want to see another tournament happen or whatever. If this is how women are going to be treated, this is how people of color are going to get called slurs and stuff. Like, it ain't worth it. It genuinely isn't worth it for me. So
It isn't, you're right.
for me, I get frustrated when again, a lot of these things get pushed to the wayside. It's like, oh no, it's happening in Fortnite, or oh, it's this one person. Because we know, I played Dota for 5, 6 years, 7 years, or whatever. Now you've been playing CS for maybe even longer. We know how rampant this shit is. So it's a question of now us as community figures, what are we gonna do about it? You know. So I don't know if that's a big question I'm sending to you, but I'd like to hear what you have to say.
No, for sure. I think the first thing is to not be afraid to have these conversations, because the amount, I don't know how many views you get total of your videos. It doesn't matter at this point, because for me, all of the people that watch this can actually, maybe take back and think of a time that they were silent, or think of a time that they sat back and heard someone say something like that and didn't do anything about it because they didn't have the energy. At that point, like, it's important for people to realize that is an opportunity of work, like you said.
Right.
That is something that you can actively change the community and stand for it. I don't think that it is healthy to banish something. I'm not saying let's not banish sexism. I'm saying it's not healthy to banish an esports TO or an esports org that there's levels where you can do things that will actually affect someone versus ranting about it off on social media consistently that is negatively affecting the topic. So I think that when you handle something, you need to try always inflict change. And the only time to do something like that is to actually change someone's mind or perception. For me, it starts with what I can tangibly change. I'm not a god figure, so I can't snap my fingers and change the mindsets of millions of people around me. But what I can do is I can make sure that does not happen within my org and micromanage that and keep my eyes peeled out for that. And when something like that happens, make sure I don't stand for it, and that should be known. And that should be compensated and corrected on the spot immediately, publicly, so that people have a role model or at least an idea to go back to and say, well, this was handled this way. I'm going to take that same approach because that worked out correctly. And I think that is sort of where we can start with it at the very least. And when people, are sexist, and when people are racist, and when people are doing stuff like that, especially knowing full well it's a tournament level, situation that happened. When stuff happens in such a small capacity, like an server, I'm not going to call this guy out, get his name, get his number, and publicly shame him. He probably had a really horrible day, and for all I know, he could be going through some really hectic stuff in his life, and I'm not going to make his life 10 million times worse. What I'm trying to say is I don't think cancel culture should be as promoted as it is online. I think that is just as detrimental. I do understand that there's a level of responsibility, and especially when it's someone that's a public figure or someone that represents a larger entity should be called out for sure. I'm not going to go out of my way and ruin this guy's entire life, you know what I mean? But I also think that it is very situational, and you need to understand, like, every single person within themselves needs to understand, okay, this is my values, this is what I stand for, this is what I don't allow in my capacity, in and around me, my friends, people in my Apex team, people who I'm versing in my CSGO random MM game. I'm not gonna let, like, people get called racist slurs and stuff like that. That's where I'm gonna, like, call a timeout and be like, actually, you know what? I'm not even gonna be a part of this game. I abandon. I will have a timeout, but I'm not gonna be entertained by you guys screaming at each other like this. I will report each one of your profiles. I'll keep a small little black book tab of them so that if I ever see those names come up again, I'll be like, yo, dudes, okay, well, now you're just straight up being a destructive asshole. And then, really make sure that they get reprimanded in that way. But at the end of the day, it's a hard topic to talk about. I don't think anybody has figured this out socially anywhere in the world, and we see that happening with Black Lives Matters. We see that happening with the Me Too movement, stuff that's really large scale. There are also still some ethical questions that get thrown into there as to, like, was this the correct way of handling this topic? And I think it is hard to discuss this topic, especially on a podcast where it's public and it's something that's, post it onto the internet because I want to be articulated correctly, that I do care about every single person in the community, and I don't think anybody deserves to be called anything ever. But at the same time, you need to make sure that you instill change in something that you do, and not just have a crazy Twitter rant on something, because at the end of the day, that doesn't change anything. Am I changing the person's attitude towards me in a CS game by publicly naming and shaming him on Twitter? Or am I just making his life a little bit worse? Like, I need to weigh up the odds there. And for me, like, what I would rather do is add him as friends and be like, hey, my name is Julia. I would like to say that was really hurtful and that sucked. And, I haven't done that to date yet, but that's something that I would like to actually action from my side too.
All right. I think like for the Fortnite situation, and I saw a lot of people tweet, and I think it's a bit sad to just dismiss them as angry rants because they have a lot of value in what they say from their tweets.
Fully believe. I think that's a different topic though for me. Not when it comes to the angry rant situation. I'm talking about like
the naming
when we had the naming and shaming and the cancel culture that goes in when you like set an army of 5,000 followers on some random dude that called you a C word in the game. Like that, I feel like it's a bit hectic. When it's someone representing a Fortnite community and something that affects a bunch of people, it's something that needs to be discussed, just like how we're discussing this in this podcast. And it needs to be made clear that we do not support that type of culture. And especially us as figures need to go the extra mile to make sure that it is not surrounded by us. And if it is, that we deal with it as far as we can and instill change. If we don't do that, then, 100%. What are we actually doing with this podcast? And this whole topic is worthless. The whole point is to instill change and to get people to understand that we want to create an esports community where people are actually having fun. If all your teammates are shit DMGs, don't call them shit DMGs, because they probably worked really hard to become that shit DMG, Like, maybe just give them a little bit of credit and just, accept your fate for being 16-0 and stop calling your teammates wall hackers because they're just better than you. Like, that's the types of discussions that we should be having. And that's the types of memes and jokes we should be telling, because we should largely outweigh what, and I'm not saying, bury the hatchet. I'm saying that we should make sure that we lead with positivity and we lead with the correct mindset and the correct values, so that it's cool to apologize, and it's cool to be nice, and it's cool to be positive.
Right. I get you. The reason I asked that question, in terms of like, how do you like rebuttal to how you think it should be addressed, because I think like cancel culture and the Fortnite kids also love fucking that word, but it's a weird one, because the reason when these things happen, I always keep my eye out who's saying what, who's saying where, who's doing what, is because when these issues of conflict happen, and I believe is, unless it's maybe, I believe is when you need to be talking about it, because that's when the eyes are there. And if you don't, if people don't, I also don't have an issue. The problem is why I really insist that I want to see it be done in issues of conflict, is that we don't do the work outside of the times of conflict. Until anybody's looking or asking or seeing, nobody really bothers about it. I mean, I think one of the first times I saw a really positive campaign in terms of dealing with issues was like Metal State's Gamers Against Gender-Based Violence thing. Obviously, gender-based violence is an issue in South Africa constantly. I don't know if it was at the forefront at that time or whatever, but it's literally a problem every fucking day. But they were like, listen here, let's try in our capacity go and try and make a difference. So that's why I get upset when these things happen and nobody wants to say or do or say anything. And I know it's difficult. Trust me, I definitely know. But because if you have a level of work done prior to this, to like say, okay, this is not okay, this is good, this is bad, this whatever, then it's like, okay, if you want to be quiet now, that's all right. But when it comes up, this is the time everybody's watching. This is the time everybody's seeing.
I think also, like, I mean, this is again very opinion based conversation that we're having here, because, for example, if I was to be at the forefront and in the conversation of that Fortnite conversation, I personally, as I'm sitting here, would still have to do quite a bit more research as to what happened, who said what happened, who's representing what, and all of that to have an opinion on that matter. And therefore DNMK can't come out with a statement saying, oh, Metal State just posted, oh, we don't support racism. Let me quickly make because then it's
That's not the right
not
thing either, right?
genuine. It's
Yes,
not
yes.
genuine. So I think at the same time, like, we need to understand that yes, cancel culture has a place. I mean, I don't like the word cancel culture because it represents actually kind of something negative, because if it's a culture to cancel someone, that is not constructive. Like, I fully believe people make mistakes, but racism, homophobic like slurs, sexist slurs, gender-based violence, those aren't mistakes.
Right.
Those are an act of hate towards another human, and that is not okay. Like, that should not be accepted. So I think it's something that should also we should look at the entirety of how an org also represents themselves through players and who they allow into the org. And this is something that I learned very early on, like literally within the first week of having DNMK. I pretty much almost had a heart attack. It was the worst thing ever. I brought someone onto the DNMK soil, fresh soil, thank God, because if we had more eyes on DNMK, it would have gone so much worse. And that person was so toxic in game, and because I couldn't physically verse this person in game, I wasn't at his level, I didn't understand like, you know, what is happening, it wasn't made public, I would never know. As an org owner, I could never know. I was seeing what was being represented to me, which was this perfect little package, which was this perfect little social media profile, which was this perfect little stream, this perfect little content, this perfect little human that was willing to do anything to create the best, you know, image of himself, herself. Like, that is exactly what I was being promised, and that got turned on so quickly. And thank God, in a personal capacity where I could immediately like speak to that person saying like, you really like hurt me. Like, I believed in you and you retaliated negatively and toxically because you got an ego. And I will tell you this straight up as a meeting. By the way, before this meeting starts, your contract is null and void. Remove all your shit, and if you don't, I will be sending a lawyer after you, because that is contractually what I'm allowed to do. Because I will not be having that in my org. And how dare you showcase yourself as this pretty little person and then being so rude and toxic towards people behind my back. Like, I find that, like, surely you can like understand that that is not okay. Like, as a public figure, that is not okay. Like, in any would you hit your dog in the face? And if you say yes, then you should go to hell. Like, straight up. Like, how could you hurt an animal? Like, that's the same mentality that I go through when people deal with any sort of a hatred at that level. And I immediately dealt with it, and I didn't even think twice about it. It wasn't even something that I was willing to make public, because it wasn't a matter of protecting myself. It was a matter of highlighting a topic that was so sensitive in the community already so early on, when I did not have the credibility to change anybody's minds, perceptions, or truths. So for me to then go like, I publicly name and shame this person, it doesn't change anything for the COD community. It doesn't change anything for the Apex community. It doesn't change anything for the Dota community. It doesn't change anything for the CS community if I do that. Like, I had to change this person's mindset, and I did. I did that in that meeting, and I made sure that I represented him by messaging every single person that he affected in their DMs, personally apologizing to them that I even let this person represent my org for however brief the moment was, and told them that, listen, if you need anything from me, please come to me, speak to me directly. Here's my cell phone number. I'm truly sorry that he even made your evening a horrible time. And that is change. That is action. You know what I mean? Like, I think that people should be slightly a little bit more realistic when it comes to, you know, who needs to be a part of the conversation and when. I also think that's really hard to distinguish on social media sometimes. So
it does become a firing squad at points, but yeah, I'm glad you all dealt with this thing decisively. I'm sure if it went public, would have been a whole different conversation that we had now.
Exactly. And I'm not afraid to talk about stuff like this. Like I said, I think it's, again, I'm not going to ruin this person's life. He admitted to what he's done, and we spoke about it in depth. Whether he is a changed person or not, I don't care. I don't want to ever even consider having that person close to my org because of that one small incident. And it wasn't a racist thing. It wasn't a homophobic or a sexist or a GBV or attacking animals. It wasn't anything, it was just being rude to another person to such a point that that person felt like it was important to speak up to the org that person was representing. And that is enough for me. That is enough for me. You know what I mean?
Obviously, I'm a big proponent of public the discourse.
Yeah.
Things, but I think, like when I actually spoke to one of the players. I did a video on the Fortnite thing, and one of the people I spoke about, me and him spoke afterwards. Let me see, I flamed a bit. I spoke to him afterwards, and we were talking, and I was talking about a certain situation, and he was talking about what happens when your friends are speaking a racist term like this. What must I say on Twitter? What must I do there? I was like, it's not about when you know the person and you actually they have a relationship with one another. Then you don't need to behave socially. Then you have an opportunity, like you say, to interact with that person one-on-one in your friendship or whatever capacity you know one another, and build from there.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's many ways to do
I
it.
agree. I think for sure there is a time and place for social interaction, especially I mean myself, I had another big issue, and it is actually on my Twitter profile. If you go far enough, you'll see some replies and responses. And there are some really toxic people on Twitter, and they are publicly toxic, and I respond to them and I'm like, dude, back the hell off. If you want to talk to me, literally send me a DM. I'll send you my cell phone number. Let's meet up at a coffee shop. If you want to brawl, Bayside KFC, let's go. Like, I'm not going to back down from this type of stuff. Like, it's not okay. Like, I'm not going to sit here and, like, not type on Twitter because it's Twitter and I have an org. Like, yes, there is a way to deal with something, and there's a way to be effective. But also, at the same time, like, I'm not going to start, like, an internet war with someone that is not going to change their mindset now just because they're in the losing side. If they're going to start fighting back at me and start being more hectic towards me, I'm just going to let them self-destruct. Like, I'm not going to add fuel to the fire. It's like, that's my responsibility as a social, entity of some sorts. And I think that should be everybody's responsibility as a community representative. Like, don't stand for that.
Like,
seriously.
Somebody said I misrepresented them, and I was like, no. No matter what I said or did, I could never have represented them as badly as they represented themselves.
Exactly. And also, that's the other thing. Yeah, to people that have a friend that is notoriously hateful or notoriously rude to people in game, literally just be like, bro, I love you. You're actually a lot of fun, like one-on-one together. We have such a jaw on Discord, but why are you so rude? Like what's wrong? Like what's the vibe? Do you want to go to Spur and share a burger special and talk about it? Like, ask your friends this if you care about them. Like, ask the people, because at the end of the day, like, it is the most uncool thing in the world to be like racist, hateful, sexist, homophobic. Like, why? Like what am I gonna like?
Right.
Like, to me, it's just, I actually do want to laugh about it because it is laughable to some extent.
Sure.
Like, it truly is. Like, for someone to be that self-destructive, I don't relate to it. So that's my 2 cents.
I get that. Now, hopefully none of my
but
friends
Bayside KFC, like Bayside KFC, like, I'm telling you, I'm telling you guys, I'm serious. I'm serious. I'm not afraid for confrontation. Like, I'm all about, like, don't at me on Twitter. Come, let's meet in person. Like, seriously. Like, what? Come fight me. Like, seriously, punch me in the face if you hate me.
Sure, I don't know.
I'll
your
take
last
it.
line about your friends checking on other friends and they're being toxic. I'm gonna have a lot of Spur burgers now if any of my friends watch this and they listen to your advice.
Yeah, no, it is important. At some point, you need to also check yourself. I think at the end of the day, you need to, like, it's no point we sit here preaching. Like, if I'm gonna end this podcast and go onto a CS game and just call someone the C word and like ruin their day, like who am I? So you have to sort of decide what type of human you're gonna be at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. That's why I'm a retired ranked Dota player. because I know my weaknesses. I know my weaknesses. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you once again. I think the last time we spoke for over an hour. This time we made it again. Our boy Fury wasn't
Yeah,
here with
for
us,
sure.
but it was a good one. I really enjoyed chatting to you this time round.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always good to talk about these topics, and definitely to people that's watching this, and definitely your audience, and I know even you specifically. I would love to take criticism. Like if there are things that I'm missing that I'm not focusing on, at 100% and this I would say goes to say for like most orgs or team owners, there are so many things that we're going on in the background and dealing with in our personal lives that like almost 100% of the times it goes over our heads. And yes, it is our responsibility to stay involved in the scene and make sure that we are up to date. But I mean, sometimes it really truly is hard to do that. And I feel like anybody in the esports community can vouch, even if you're just a community member, to stay up to date to everything. I personally don't like drama. I don't think that's something that I interact with. So I mean, for me, I would like to understand, where are the spaces where orgs in South Africa can benefit from, expanding into the community, or rather how the community can benefit from orgs expanding, and how they would like to benefit from orgs expanding, so that it isn't like, an elitist community, because that is exactly what we're not trying, the opposite of what we're trying to achieve with DNMK. So, like I want to understand what makes people proud of South African teams and orgs, and how they would like to be involved with it, and what they would like to have more access to, so that we know that when we're speaking to people that we can talk for the community in that sense too, and also respond back to the community the way that they would like to be spoken to. So I think that's really important, and don't hold back on that either. Like, TOs, org owners need to know where they can build and where they can do better, because that is all that what we're trying to do at the end of the day.
Yeah, Barry had a great quote about this. I interviewed him on one of my old podcasts on my YouTube channel, and he's like, "Listen, yeah, esports fans and gamers, I know you guys like to complain about things, but if you find an issue with somebody and you say, 'Listen, yeah, you shit,' that guy gets nothing from it. But if you say, 'Listen, this is why you shit,' everybody gets value and there's a chance to improve.
That is perfect. Like, I totally commend Barry for that 100%, because even if someone like sends me a DM going like, 'Jules, I really don't feel like this was the best move,' like 100% I'm going to take that to heart, but I would like to understand why not. I mean, like I said, I'm one human with one brain and two eyes. Like, all I can do is see and consume and research what I have in my world around me. And the way that social media works is that it doesn't necessarily represent the same on my phone as it does on yours. So how must I know your opinion? So I need to understand what the problem is, and personally, I would much rather like to have a conversation on Discord, a conversation, video, whatever the case might be, so that I can ask questions and I can get to the bottom of it, instead of having a feud on Twitter where it is ego fueled, or like that is at the end of the day the biggest issue. And I think we should all understand that ego is at the end of the day the biggest enemy, and we should understand that. That's why I'm a little bit hesitant with the whole Twitter scenario. I would rather call someone up and be like, "Hey, you're an absolute asshole for doing this to this person. Let's meet up and let me talk to you about this properly and change your mind." Like that's what I think it should be about.
Yeah, for sure. And to be fair, to your credit, you've never actually represented yourself as like you don't even use Twitter often. You're like, "Listen, yeah, you're for business. Don't get me involved in y'all's riffraff."
No. I literally screamed at Twitch live on stream like the other night. Like I was like, "Listen, you Twitch staff." And I was like literally addressing Twitch as if they're watching my stream, because I needed to get the topic out there that there's so many Twitch streamers. I had to restart my stream 20 times in the middle of a Call of Duty tournament because I couldn't get encoding. Like, that's ridiculous to me. Like, it is absolutely ridiculous. Like, I can't believe that 5 years on Twitch and we can't even get consistent encoding settings. Like, that to me just blows my mind. So, like, yes, I'm absolutely someone that's all for being outspoken, but I want people to see my face. I want people to see how I react to things. I don't hide behind words and text and stuff like that.
That's good. You have a problem with Julia? Meet her at Bayside KFC, boys. Thank y'all. for tuning into this podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure. Julia, once again, it's the good shit. Hopefully, one day she'll give us merch to give away on this podcast. I'm just kidding. Now I'm really part of esports.
Almost there,
I'm
almost
saying,
there.
wanting free things. I'm kidding. Don't forget to check this podcast on Apple Music, Spotify, Google Play, Google Podcast, all those places. Hit a like, subscribe, and on YouTube, of course. And of course, don't forget to follow Esports Central, people. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube as well. They're everywhere. Don't forget the site as well. Worst outro ever. I'm tired. We spoke for 2 hours. Fuck you guys for listening. Until the next one.